Hi, folks. Today, what we're going to be talking about are the four types of pathogens and how they affect human health. So, the first one we're going to talk about on the screen is the parasite protozoa. And so, a disease that's commonly associated with this is malaria. And malaria is actually passed on by mosquitoes. So, what happens is when the mosquito bites us, its saliva actually causes our body cells to swell up and then eventually die. You'll notice that the malaria typically happens in warmer climates and it spreads easily in those areas. Now, uh, next one we're going to talk about is the fungus or fungi. And so when we look at fungi, typically what's going to happen here is these fungal infections are going to typically start in our lungs or or on our skin. So in the picture you see a foot, and so this would be athlete's foot, which is a common fungi that we would see that would affect human health. So what they do is they're going to absorb their food from our cells. So they don't conduct photosynthesis or anything, but they do reproduce via spores. So now these spores, if we come in contact, eventually will then feed off of our skin or, like I said, in our lungs. So examples of these would be things like mold, mushrooms, yeast. Those are all examples of fungi. So um, one thing we can do to combat this is make sure we're keeping areas sanitary and such, and making sure that we're killing spores before they can actually enter our system. The next one we're going to talk about is a bacteria. And so bacteria, a good example of bacteria would be the E. coli bacteria, so E. coli poisoning. And so one thing to know is bacteria grow through exponential growth, as you can see in this graph over here. So the number of bacteria will grow over time as time lapses. But bacteria are single-celled organisms. They lack a nucleus, so they're not the smartest, but they reproduce via mitosis. So that's where one cell produces two identical daughter cells. So they can reproduce rapidly. So bacterial growth, sometimes we can look at bacterial growth within our body and our stomach, but basically what happens is it's going to damage the cells and it's going to poison you. So we can think of a sore stomach or coli poisoning upsetting us. So we can take things like antibiotics to combat against these bacteria. So antibiotics like penicillin, for example, that can kill bacteria and it can stop a bacterial infection. So we would take those and obviously would feel a lot better after for doing so. The fourth and last of the uh, pathogens that we're going to talk about, and remember, a pathogen is a disease-causing microbe, so something that causes disease. The last one we're going to talk about is the HIV virus, and so viruses would be the fourth one in our screencast here. Now, HIV, or the human immune virus, basically what it does is it attacks our immune system. So it actually attacks our helper T cells. And these are white blood cells. So these are our disease fighting. They have a nucleus, those cells, in which we've already talked about. And so eventually what happens is this will progress into what we call AIDS, so acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Now, viruses are very small non-cellular particles, and so they have this protein coat that surrounds their genetic material. But after injections, the virus will multiply. And in this case, for HIV, because it attacks the helper T cells, and their job is to send signals to our B cells and our killer T cells, but sends signals to the B cells to produce antibodies to attack, or not necessarily attack, but slow down that virus that's a foreign invader in the body. So without these helper T cells sending these signals to the killer T and the B cells to produce those antibodies, then we're not combating and slowing it down, so it has the opportunity to continue to multiply. So anyways, these are the four pathogens, the disease-causing microbes, and a little bit about how they affect human health. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next screencast.